Steve Wells, who has a particular interest in anticipating these disruptive technologies and how they might mould our experiences. Good evening to you, Steve. Thank you so much for joining me. I do think it's a fascinating topic. I've made it very clear my position on this, that yes, there might be some advantages, but the advantages don't appear to be for the customer. They appear to be for the corporation. Am I wrong?
Well, first of all, good evening, Bev. Thanks for having me. It was quite a dystopian perspective, I think, a dystopian picture that you painted there. I see something that's potentially quite different. And let's remember what we're seeing at the moment is the result of a raft of different trends. And a lot of those trends have been in train for tens of years. So a lot of this stuff shouldn't really come as that much of a surprise. I mean, these grab and go store technologies, they have been around for some time. Amazon have now got 20 stores in the UK. Aldi have that one. Morrison's, Tesco's and Sainsbury's are all testing stores. But, you know, it's such it's a tiny part of the marketplace. And as consumers, we all have the power in our hands to choose where to shop. And I think ultimately that's what we'll see. Some people will really like these retail experiences. People are already perhaps of a certain age, perhaps also of a certain disposable income, because I think one of the important things that we do need to realize as a society is that these kind of technologies and the way that they're deployed do risk social exclusion. So we do need to have that in mind. But, you know, the question is it the remit of corporations with shareholders to actually make that call, or is it the call of government to develop strategy and policy to actually make sure that social exclusion is minimized as far as possible?
I don't think either of them care, though, Steve. I don't get the impression that neither the government nor the corporations care about social exclusion. There's no profit in worrying about a pensioner who doesn't have anyone to talk to in the day. There's no profit in you know, my dad, my amazing 86-year-old dad, he wouldn't be able to shop in this shop. He doesn't have a smartphone. And he luckily has my mum to do things for him. She would probably be the one arguing at the turnstile saying, let me in anyway, I'm going to give you some cash. But they're unusual. And I really genuinely worry about this rate of change. I mean, you say it's been going on for a while. I completely disagree. So Amazon has got 15 stores now in Ealing. The first one was only last March. They're going to have 260 of these by 2025. This is the very first one from Aldi, the one that we saw there. It's in Greenwich in London. Yeah. And I don't believe, Steve, that it's what the customer wants. That's what worries me. I feel like these conversations are being had in boardrooms about how much more profitable this will be and how exciting it is, but I don't believe it's what the consumer desires. Where are they getting the idea from that we want this?
OK, so there are a number of things I think to unpack there. I mean, first of all, there are a group of consumers that really like the technology, that really value the convenience, the fact that they don't, once they subscribe to the store's app, that they don't have to worry about going through a checkout. There are another group of consumers that I think you're absolutely right about. They're not necessarily being spoken to decide what they want, but there is choice. There is still choice. There will be choice for an extraordinary number of years. Now, but if we roll forward...
There isn't choice if I want to go into that Aldi. I love a budget supermarket. I love Aldi. I love Lidl. I want to shop. I do shop there. But I don't have the choice to go into that shop unless I subscribe to their digital tyranny.
So go to a different store. I want
to go to that store.
I do not buy the argument that there is not enough alternatives. Right now, this technology and the deployment of these technologies are in their infancy. So there's lots and lots of opportunities for us to shop elsewhere. I do think there's an issue about how are these decisions arrived at. There isn't a real benefit to enterprises, to corporations, almost in any sector, to do anything other than automate, because automation tends to be cheaper than people. And I think you raised a really interesting point earlier on when you said, well, what about universal basic income? What about some of these other things? How do we actually ensure that people continue to live fulfilling lives? And actually, that's the real debate here, because what we won't do, and what it's not right to do, I don't think, is stop the development of the technology. The right thing to do is to understand what the implication is and what as a society we should do about it. Because if we didn't take that approach to technology, then we'd all be riding around on horses rather than in cars.
But I think we're doing that back to front, Steve. I think we need to have the conversations now. And I want these corporations. Rishi Sunak is in America this week with Biden, and he wants us to be the centre for legislation and framework around AI. And he said, I'm going to get all the bosses from the AI companies in one room together. I thought, oh, brilliant. Well, that's going to be an echo chamber of them all agreeing to keep the plebs where we belong, whilst they put all the regulation in place to make their businesses more profitable. Don't fill a room with that lot. Fill a room with that lot and me or other people who want to challenge the presumption that this is always good news.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree in terms of, whether that's going to be an effective form of consultation, and perhaps some kind of citizen-wide consultation about what makes sense, what it is that we actually want. The issue here, though, is that you're still going to get a significant number of people, probably, I think, the majority, saying, yes, I like these technologies. These technologies will allow me to do so much more, make my life so much easier. And I think individuals, people, the population probably don't understand that there is this broader perspective here, which is the potential for these technologies to actually take jobs out of the marketplace. Now,
and replace them with what?
That's not necessarily a bad thing, so
and
long
replace
as we
them
have
with what,
the
Steve?
societal and social structures to allow people to live fulfilling lives. And that future may be out there. On the other hand, it might not, because these technologies might not be as pervasive as we imagine.
But you see, that should be, surely the conversation should start with that. Like, the question is, what is important in life? Human beings being purposeful, getting out of bed. I don't know whether you're familiar with the famous Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the triangle. OK, so what we need at the bottom is our shelter and our food. And then at the pinnacle of that is this sense of purpose. And what we're doing is we're now saying the hierarchy of needs has to include apps. Like, the app is above the food and water. Arguably, the app is before the food and water, because you can't go in the supermarket unless you've got your app, and we are neglecting humanity. No,
this is where your dystopian perspective is creating completely false impression.
Somebody needs to.
Because I think it's a great debate to have, but we need to be really careful that we put the right balance in place, because these technologies aren't stopping anyone anywhere in the country from having what we might think of as a normal shopping experience.
Yes.
What they're doing is they're testing the validity of the technology to make sure that it can do what it's supposed to do. The chances are it can. So what we then need to do, if we broaden the debate out, is say, so how do we transition from what we might think of as a society characterized by personal interactions to one where a lot of society is characterized by digital interactions? And what is it we need to put in place to ensure that we continue to survive and thrive as people? And that may be that if we do have, and I'm going to jump ahead now to this idea of universal basic income, but if we do end up with universal basic income because artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and these other really smart technologies are able to do the jobs that we were traditionally able to do, it might be that we need these structures provided by the public sector that allow us to live fulfilling lives. Because whatever a lot of people say, most of our fulfillment is associated with work. So we do need to replace that. It's a great debate, but we need to be really careful that we don't create an unrealistically dystopian view of the future.
What you have just described, Steve, is communism. What you've just described is a future in which nobody works and everyone gets the same amount of money from the government. Don't aspire to anything. Don't compete. Don't try and fulfill your potential. Sit at home with your AI headset, playing on your tech, and the government will give you £1,600. I don't want to live in that world.
I disagree. That's communism. However, one of the things that if we project forward, we might see is something that's very different from the capitalism that's generated the wealth that a lot of people have been able to enjoy. So, if we use that universal basic income example, we don't yet know how that might be funded. We don't yet know what the transition of enterprise will be in terms of its ability to create funding through the public purse in order to pay for that. If that's the case, then actually you don't raise more tax by taxing people, because the people will be paid through universal basic income. So the tax burden falls on enterprise. Now, perhaps what you do then is you change the nature of the tax system. And what you do is you tax those enterprises that focus on automation, and you give the benefit to those companies that employ people. So you kind of shift where the tax is made. What you then do is you begin to say, well, what is it that the public sector, the public services should include? Should it be free banking? Should it be free public transport? Should it be free access to Wi-Fi? So we start to look at the kind of services that people will value when you put those in place. Not only that, maybe you replace what we think of as work by some form of community service. Now, that's just one idea that we do. And we have to be careful what we do. We still have to give people choice. I'm not suggesting that any of these things eliminate the need for choice, but we shouldn't just kind of hide our head in the sand and say, oh, this is all awful, without actually looking at what the future might be, what the choices might be, and what the range of different social solutions might be, even within the context of a very highly digitized world. Because actually, we don't know. And that's why debates like this are useful. Because
but don't you think,
the future's uncertain.
Steve, I could talk to you all night.
About it.
I could talk to you all night. We might have to carry this on over a couple of bottles of wine, one night, you and I. But the thing that I feel I'm actually more worried having spoken to you rather than less. Because the image of the world, you think my world is dystopian, your world is dystopian, in which people do community service and get paid by the government. It's never going to work. It's not factoring in. I tell you what, I've got 2 teenagers, nearly 3 teenagers in my house. They would love the government to give them 1,600 quid to do absolutely every month, to do absolutely nothing, and then tell them to go and pick litter a couple of times a week. You know what? They'll be depressed. They'll be isolated. They'll be unfit. They'll be demotivated. They will lack intelligence. They will lack initiative. And I'm going to blame you when it happens. But Steve, it's been a joy. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for filling us in on. I mean, look, we got a statement from Aldi. Let me know what you think, won't you?